Hi there, welcome to Indycar on Thursday morning. My name's Gordon Ross. Today I'm in Partick. I'm broadcasting from my favourite car park here today. This morning's show concerns two things really. But before I launch into that, let me just say one thing. This show was never intended to become an investigative journalism programme. However, having said that, a number of investigative journalists have actually been in touch with me over many months, passing news stories and news snippets of information as they come in. And as real investigative journalism is going on in the background, the kind of journalism which we don't see in the mainstream newspapers or on the BBC or ITV these days, as this happens, it's feeding into this show, and I'm now sort of disseminating it to you. And today is one of those mornings where I've got a couple of pieces of information which will not make it into the usual British media television news. And the first one of these is the appointment of a new head of the board for the BBC. It's a lady called Rona Fairhead. Now, many of you probably have no idea who Rona Fairhead is, and why should you? Rona Fairhead was in charge of the HSBC bank in America, which recently was investigated and fined over $170 million for money laundering. This is a scandal which rocked America, where mafia money, drug money, and illegal gains from all over the world were laundered through the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, which is what HSBC stands for, under the watchful eye of Rona Fairhead. Now, what possible motive could the British government have for installing the head of a corrupt bank as the overseer of the BBC board? I ask you, why? Why would you want somebody like that in charge of the state broadcaster? Well, the answer is quite obvious. The state broadcaster is a corrupt organisation itself, and it needs a corrupt individual who's an expert in such things to help steer it along. Obviously, there's not been any real negative news about Rona Fairhead's appointment in the British press, because they don't want you to know that the person who was in charge of a money laundering bank in the United States is now in charge of the BBC board. The second piece of news, which is related tangentially to this appointment, is a piece of information which I wasn't aware of, but there is a scheme which is now being run by the BBC where they offer to recruit new reporters for British newspapers. Now, it's being sort of put out there as some kind of scheme to assist the news media to locate new talent. But in actual fact, it's a vetting process done by the BBC, who search around local newspapers and other places and websites for young, talented journalists who are, shall we say, sympathetic to the Tory and the BBC way of doing things. In other words, who are interested in climbing the greasy pole at the BBC or in the British media in general, and are happy to put out the kind of pro-establishment stories that the BBC and other news media in the UK want them to. So not only now is the BBC being run by the former head of a money laundering organisation, it's also now recruiting the very same, the very news reporters for the newspapers. It's now taking over the entire media in the United Kingdom, and it's actually vetting the reporters who get jobs in newspapers now. Now, if this doesn't worry you, then there's something wrong with you. We are supposedly the place where there is freedom of speech and free media, but in actual fact we now have a British state extending its tendrils right into the BBC, recruiting people who were head of criminal organisations to run the BBC, and now we're having this Stasi-like state propaganda organisation choosing the reporters for newspapers and disguising this as some kind of talent recruitment drive or some kind of wonderful new scheme. It just goes to show you just how corrupt the whole of the United Kingdom has become. And various people over the years, particularly those who know banking and know international banking, have said that the United Kingdom is now, and has been for a long time, the most corrupt country on the planet. Not because, if you commit an offence you can pass a bung to police officers, not that kind of corruption. This is far, far bigger than that. Britain is the go-to place for drug cartels, for terrorist organisations and anybody else who has made money through criminal activities to launder it into tax havens which are protected by the British state. And that is what the City of London actually does for a living now. Not only does it do that, but it's protected by this BBC, which is now being run by a former bank head whose bank was found guilty of money laundering in the United States and fined over $175 million for doing it. What does it tell you about the country you live in? Do you, as a Scot, want to live in a country which is the most corrupt country in the world? Do you want to live in a country which, after it has left the European Union, its sole and main source of money will be criminal activity and laundering that cash through its banks in London and into its tax havens on its various island protectorates? Do you want Scotland to be a part of that or not? Personally, I don't. I don't see any reason why we should attach ourselves to such a humongous criminal empire as that. It really is quite disgraceful the way the BBC and the way the British state is now behaving. But it all starts to make sense now. Brexit is beginning to make sense now. Britain is separating itself off from Europe because it is about to become a tax haven itself. And that is the Tories' endgame. The United Kingdom, with its 55 million English and Welsh people and its 5 million Scots, is about to become a gigantic tax haven, a place to channel trillions of dollars worth of illegally got money into secret bank accounts hidden on islands or even on this island. That is the main business of the United Kingdom these days. That's why they don't manufacture and export anything. That's how the country manages to limp along despite its humongous debts. These gigantic debts and deficits should have wiped the country out by now, but they haven't, and you must have to wonder why that is. And the reason is that there's money coming from somewhere else that's propping the state up. And the most obvious place to look is the banking sector. There have been a number of whistleblowers over the years. One who recently left the HSBC and has been passing information to news organisations in other parts of the globe about exactly what's been going on at HSBC and exactly what the purpose is of Rona Fairhead being put in this high position of power within the BBC. And it's not to make the BBC a better place or make it run better, nor is it to help recruit young talented individuals to the newspaper industry. It is to cement the establishment and the banking establishment's grip on the media of this country so that we do not ever find out what's actually going on right in the middle of our main cities, right on the high streets of London. Money is being laundered and hidden away in tax havens protected by the UK. Think about how many islands the United Kingdom has in its protectorate zone. There's the British Virgin Islands, there's the Bahamas, there's the Channel Islands, and there's a lot of those. There's the Scilly Isles, Guernsey, Jersey. There's even the Isle of Wight, for goodness sake. The Isle of Man, the whole of the United Kingdom. Every island that is a part of the UK or a UK territory is a protectorate and is a tax haven. And that must tell you something. That's what the industry of the UK really is. Money laundering. It's nothing to do with making beer or selling tea bags or jam or biscuits to anybody. It's about laundering their money, and that's the truth of the matter now. Anyway, as far as Indycar goes, I'll not be doing too many more of these big stories, these big exposés. This is not my work, incidentally. I am just passing this information along from several other sources which are in the public domain. Whistleblowers have told the truth about what HSBC was doing, and they have shone a light on what the BBC is now going to be doing under the watchful eye of Rona Fairhead. So, frankly, the more I think about the United Kingdom and the more I see of its corrupt black heart, the more inclined I am to leave it, and the more inclined I am to encourage everybody that I know in Scotland to vote to dissolve the union with the United Kingdom. Scotland is not a dishonest money laundering capital. Scotland has been dragged along, and the blame has been spread amongst the 4 countries of the UK over the years for all of the things that the British have done all over the globe in terms of ripping off other countries' natural resources, colonising them, and sowing dissent, causing wars and so on. All of that has been spread, the blame has been spread around the other countries of the UK. We've all been tarred with the same brush. And now that the head of the corrupt HSBC is in charge of the corrupt BBC, we know which way things are going to be heading from now on. And the battle that we'll have in social media against the might of the BBC under this corrupt new leader is going to be extremely difficult for us. So we will need every social media activist that we can get. Do not be put off by the British media, which is trying to say that Facebook is bad and you should stay off it, or that Twitter is bad and you should stay off it, or Snapchat is bad, or YouTube. Don't stay off any social media. Make sure you keep your accounts and you keep your activism going. Do not stop. In fact, if anything, double your efforts, because if we resist this media onslaught against social media, then we will protect the very weapon that we have to fight back in the next referendum. But if we allow the British state media to give us the impression that social media is in some way corrupt itself, then we'll have lost the battle. The main battle for the next referendum will be fought right here on these airwaves, on your phones, on your tablets. And if you close your accounts, you will allow people like Rona Fairhead to win this propaganda battle, and we can't allow that to happen. I'll leave you with those thoughts today. That'll probably be the end of these big political shows for the time being. I will go back to something a little bit more targeted later on in the week, and I'll have a special programme tomorrow for Hands Off Our Parliament. That will hopefully go out sometime around 1 o'clock tomorrow. I'll see you then. Bye for now.